Welcome to episode 115 of the Hard Truth About B2B E-commerce. I'm your co-host, Isaiah Bollinger, and I'm back with Tim.
Hey Isaiah, how are you? It's good to see you today. Happy holidays! We're recording in the middle of the holiday season, so you may see this later, but hope everyone enjoyed their holidays in the past tense, and happy 2024. We'll probably have this out in early 2024, so happy holidays to everyone. So Tim Peterson here. I want to just mention a couple things specifically. In addition to just a couple shout outs to Mark Lamb, somebody who's in Bali, Indonesia, by the way, and Will Nitza, Mark Samuel, a few other folks who are avid listeners also at Montreal. I thought it would be good to mention a Buzzsprout end of the year report that we got on our podcast. So here's something funny. The top cities and places around the world for downloads. Number one is Toronto, not even in the US. How do you like that? Number one is Toronto. Number two is New York. Number three is Dubai. Number four is Indonesia, Jakarta, and Bali. Number five is Berlin. So we've been telling our listeners all the time to pass this around and tell us where they're listening from. And occasionally we'll hear from people around the world, and this is proof of it. Those are the top downloads. So amazing. Hello, everybody around the world. So our wonderful guests will have the opportunity to talk to not a huge, but a very intense and focused worldwide audience for B2B e-commerce. And we're very happy that after, when we start, Isaiah, right? They're in the early, during
beginning of COVID, when, we couldn't do events and we had to kind of ramp up our digital marketing, given, in-person marketing was pretty much dead. So we're going to be coming up on 4 years sometime next year.
It's incredible, but I was really surprised by that. So again, we're niche, right? We're not like the million listener podcast, but it's great to see that. I was so happy. So thank you to all the listeners. I'm just going to pause briefly so that our team can insert the sponsor mentions, and then I'm going to throw it back to Isaiah to introduce our guests. Balance is a B2B e-commerce payment solution that works well for you and for your buyers. It offers a seamless one-click checkout for almost any payment method, including ACH, wire, checks, cards, even terms. It's used by leaders in B2B e-commerce, and it's as easy as buying a shirt from Amazon. Check them out at getbalance.com. Book a session and tell them what your needs are. They are the first dedicated payment platform for B2B e-commerce, 100% tailored to your needs. Thanks again to our sponsor, Balance. Isaiah, who do we have today?
Yeah, we have a special guest duo today. So excited to introduce Vladimir and Brandon from IT Delight. I'll spare butchering your guys' both last names. Since there's two of you, we'll go with the first names for now. But yeah, thanks for joining us. And if you guys don't mind, whoever wants to go first, maybe just quick intro and background and pass it off to your colleague.
Yeah, listen, I'll jump in first. Brandon Briggs here in the state of Utah. Been with IT Delight for a little bit. We're just a great agency focused on mostly kind of senior talent. Work with merchants, but we work with a lot of agencies, right? That's kind of been our bread and butter and our core focus, all around kind of Magento technology, Shopware. Those have been kind of our two main e-com platforms. But listen, love this space. I love e-commerce. I've been in this for probably far longer than I really would like to admit, but it's been fun. It's been a journey. So
that's great. That's great. Great to have you here. Hey, Vladimir. So Vlad or Vladimir, which would you prefer?
Well, it doesn't really matter.
Whatever. Just want to make sure. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Vladimir. Yeah, I am Chief Strategy Officer at IT Delight. I try to be I try to learn e-commerce actually every day. So there is always up and downs. So what we're trying to do at IT Delight, we're trying to follow, how the market flows and then how it changes, especially last year, we see that it changed a lot. So we still big fans of Adobe solutions, and that's why we did it so far. So for almost 8 years. And on the other hand, we have we started to think of getting more value to maybe to some end customers. So we mostly work with the other agencies. That's what's our core model was. So so basically we utilize resources a lot, and it's we originally from Ukraine, so it's I guess the Ukraine has a really the popularity of the country with high engineer skilled guys. So maybe that's why a lot of resources still here, and even due to the war. So we still get a lot of requests for our developers here, but it's changed. It's changed a lot, especially last year. So that's why we try to follow. We try to follow the market, but mostly to get maybe end customers. So we try to feel the pain of some entrepreneurs who are struggling with some lame places in the store. So that's what we try to do, and that's why Brandon here. So when we hired him, so that's the guy who was actually helping us a lot to feel the pain of the what could be the issues on the store. So what we have to do with it, and how we can help this. So that's what drive me in actually in e-commerce.
So I just have to mention something really quick that would our listeners would probably appreciate. So you wouldn't know it by my name, Peterson, but I have a Ukrainian heritage, right? And a lot of the folks that I've worked with over the years happen to be Ukrainian engineers, just happened that way, right? So when I first started working with people on Magento projects, we were always getting referred offshore to like folks in Kiev or something, right? It was just really, really amazing the impact, that those folks had on Magento. I think there was Guerrilla Group originally from Ukraine also?
They had a very large offshore team in
They had
Ukraine.
like thousands of people for Guerrilla in Ukraine. So
they
it
were
was just
very early and smart about adopting. I know them a little too well. I don't want to go into.
No, it's just, but it's funny how the
former
evolution
owners,
went. Right?
but and obviously I think they're now part of Wonderman Thompson or whatever. But
Yep.
I think they were very early on bringing on kind of offshore Ukraine and those in the early 2010s. I think even 2000.
Yeah, it was a while ago now. It was really
2008.
very, very big deal.
They built up with that early on. So
I would say this too. I mean, I think most people don't even realize that even the early days, right? Magento's core development team set in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so, a lot, I think, of what is Magento and e-commerce, we owe the roots to it, out of Ukraine. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty great. That's pretty great.
I posted about that, about everyone in the, when unfortunately the news broke out about the war, but we owe I think the e-commerce community owes a debt to Ukraine from that perspective. So, and I think Magento kickstarted a lot of the e-commerce industry in some ways, or democratized it, and I think Shopify has kind of accelerated that, especially with more like the small business and more of the direct consumer. But this podcast is meant to be more B2B, and I think that's why we started this podcast. Is the direct consumer we feel like has mostly been solved. I mean, yes, it's going to get better and more advanced, but it's relatively easy, I would say, to build a good shop that sells to a consumer, right? Like it's not that difficult. But I think when it comes to B2B, there's just so many complex challenges, and just getting online adoption still challenging. So one of the first things you guys mentioned that I'd love to get into is just large catalogs. That's usually one of the challenges. It's just an almost ubiquitous challenge in B2B. Like B2C, sometimes they're very successful with 50 SKUs or 100 SKUs. In B2B, it's like even the small shops have 10,000, 100,000 SKUs, and it's just a lot of manpower. I think that's what people underestimate. And so where do you see that stumbling block? Like, well, I guess it's kind of a broad question, but what is the first kind of problem you see with just large catalogs in B2B?
Let me leverage my experience on this one, right? I built a store in those early days of Magento. I think we had 6 million-ish plus SKUs. We had a couple domains. I mean, we had both a B2C and a B2B focus. We were trying to do the B2B side as well back in those days. And I think it took almost a couple of years to figure out even how to approach the catalog and how to bring it all in. And of course, we were presented with every scenario under the sun, right? Pricing, how do you manage pricing against that many SKUs? How, and what do you do programmatically?
B2B pricing,
Imaging,
right? Customer specific.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you get pricing tables of all different sizes and sorts, and everyone logging in has, different agreed upon rates, and there's no pictures, there's no descriptions, there's no, there was nothing that seemed like for that. And so I would say, first and foremost, don't be afraid of it. You can get there, you can do it, right? It just does take a little bit of kind of extra creative thinking in terms of actually how you're going to do it. You're probably not going to do it like a regular B2C merchant might.
And you said years, right? I think that's what the challenge is, right? That like these people kind of come in, oh, I'm going to modernize all my B2B commerce in 6 months, or, and I think just even getting an upgraded catalog can take pretty significant amount of time. Do you see it as more stages? Like, don't be afraid to maybe launch with a kind of MVP version. Because, I think that's the problem. People don't want to wait 3 years to launch something.
Yeah. So one of the strategies that we took back in that time was actually to look at it by our manufacturers, right? Because we were reselling products by, in the power sports world. So it was Honda and Polaris and Yamaha and Suzuki and all these types of, brands. And so what we started to do is say, listen, we're building out an overall store that has everything. But why don't we start with manufacturer-specific stores, bring down the complexity quite a bit, and then focus on those nuances manufacturer by manufacturer? And what that allowed us to do is just kind of find a place to start, coordinate our marketing efforts around that one as we were continuing to build the others. And eventually it all came together into one.
So you think that in some cases they should just start with a subset of the catalog to get live, like go live with something.
I mean, I certainly would, right? I think the numbers are out there to tell you, get there. Yeah.
So I have a related question to that. So I was, currently working with a company that millions of SKUs, parts, that sort of thing. And, they're setting up these different, initiatives, and some of them, they're not sure how any of them are actually going to work, but it's like, we want an image and a video for every single, part. It's like, yay, so how do you approach that, right? Because that is something that everyone who gets in the middle of debate, in a lot of different angles on this. Do you just say everything new and then you just keep going back, everything popular and you keep going out, everything that engineering has already sent us or sales has sent us, and then we build out from there? How do you do that? Like when you're saying I need to add all of this information, to these 6 million SKUs or million SKUs that you have?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it would be just trying to understand the business, right? First and foremost. I mean, what is it that we're selling? Because, my store had 6 million whatever SKUs in it. We didn't come close to selling every one of those 6 million SKUs, right? But we had to have them, right? And so understanding the business, understanding what people were searching for, understanding what people were clicking on, and just trying to prioritize where to spend my time and effort first, I think was, probably the biggest thing to do, right? Don't, what do they say? What's the saying about, eating an elephant? It's just one bite at a time, right? So find what works best, where you want to start.
Yeah, they say they have 30 to 40% of their SKUs are kind of high traffic or whatever term that they use. And so I said, we'll start there, right? It's like, what else do you do? And I said, just start from the busiest and, the ones that are most important to the business, and keep going from there.
It almost seems like B2B, they don't have that merchandising muscle on average. And, consumer retail companies, they're used to that. They have merchandising people, or they're used to that kind of like expertise. And I think a lot of this is just these B2B companies have never really merchandised. They've had a catalog, like a paper catalog, but they've never really done kind of like strategic merchandising on an e-commerce website or in retail the way, you know, and I think that's, you know, Tim, I know this is like a lot of your original background, but it seems like that's kind of the missing skill set here, right? And they don't even think of it as a skill set or a job, you know, when
No, they don't. It's taken a while to kind of get it there, and it is, to an extent, it's sort of the B2C, influence into B2B, but only to an extent, because when salespeople and all of these other teams who are involved in B2B e-commerce start talking together, they realize that they have the same needs, but they didn't quite understand that at first, right? So you do have to present to a consumer, in B2B in a certain way. And the merchandising is very critical. And that's where videos come in. When you get in conversations with top clients who are spending millions of dollars and they say, well, I need to have video, you have to do something about that. And that's something that does occur now. It's pretty common.
That's it. That's what I would say, Tim. I think you hit the nail on the head too. It's like, when in doubt, talk to your sales reps, talk to your customers. Yep. Just use your best judgment and your gut. I mean, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of things you can do on the financial side, see what's been selling and understanding that. But at the end, and if you want just a place to start, that's a great place to start.
I agree.
Technical challenges. I mean, obviously you guys have a long technical history. I'm assuming there's performance challenges you ran into at 6 million SKUs, and what are some of the challenges of just that technology?
Well, if you remember the so our famous saying at the time as we were doing this is don't touch any button in the back end of Magento that's orange, because it's not going to work. Right. So that was kind of the mantra, that's what we were going towards. And how many of the buttons were orange? Yeah, every one of them. Right. So, this was long before the indexers were working. It's like you would hit that and the store would time out and the front end of the store would come down. And so there was a lot of different things. Right. So again, we focused on being creative around how we ran some of those types of processes. Let's do some of these routine things. Don't have someone in there modifying catalog stuff throughout the day, right? We're going to do these in batches. So we built new processes around, let's update all these things, and then in a time frame that was off or in a dev environment, let's make these updates, and let's do things in a way that was just smarter. So good technical people, right? We engaged a number of agencies. We had a couple of really good developers that I hired internally, and ultimately that just made the difference, right? We were able to do those creative things, and it wasn't just hit the button, it was orange. Don't change your product and save it. It's just not going to work.
What about now, though? You think with where things have come, the technology's improved, you think it's a little bit easier? You're still going to run into some of those problems?
Yeah, honestly, it's a whole lot easier. I would say, though, as you go about looking at solutions and different technologies, always ask the question about, here's my SKU count. What does that mean? What does it look like across all of the various systems that you have, right? Because one thing that we found constantly is, while we made Magento work, then we pushed the problem to another system or another, and it's like, okay, now the ERP isn't working. Now the CRM piece doesn't work. Now
all the systems weren't built to scale to 10 million SKUs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we, again, get creative, right? It doesn't mean that every system has to have every piece of data in it, right? Sometimes you can work in their own ways and then talk to each other and make that work. But that's the approach that I would ultimately look at.
Cool. So Vladimir, tell me a little bit about sort of the agency approach to specifically what Brandon is talking about here. Just to I want to kind of go back and forth for our clients to think about this. So let's say I'm the client and I come up to you today and I say, I got 6 million SKUs, but it's kind of a mess. And, I really need to improve. What do I do? I need to improve my situation. So how do you approach it just from the agency side, right? I mean, I completely understand what Brandon was talking about, but now you're the agency and I'm coming at you as a client. So what's your approach? Like who comes to that conversation and says, well, here's what we think and here's how we study it and whatever.
Well, that's that's a good part where we do some do some homework. So we first getting more deeper in the customer needs. So what's behind these requirements? I mean, why he needs to add some image or video or whatever it is, and what will be the process. So what's the end goal, So I remember the case, for example, with one of our German customers, because, well, it's just historically happened that we started our growth from Western Europe. So our very first customers were catched there. And I remember the case when some of our customers came to us, and he asked. There was an eyewear brand, and there was a case when he asked us to create some kind of not a configurator, but he wants to have a 3D model of the human face. Okay. To check how the person will look like with the glasses on. And we found some something like this. So and we found he found some third party extension for it, so we have to connect. That was it.
Did it freeze? It froze a little.
Yeah, I think we lost Vladimir. Hopefully he comes back.
he certainly will. But I'm happy to add a little bit of color to that one too.
Make a connection. Well, we just use this plugin. I apologize. Maybe I have bad connection. What the last part you heard, guys?
You're building the glasses, the 3D, and the connections. You were talking about.
So the idea of the customer, the initial idea of the customer was to take this 3D model from the different website, just use it, and that's it. So, but that was not customizable at all. So the end goal was not reached. So it's not customizable. You can't change the face. You can't change the look and feel of the glasses on, and that's it. So, and that's where actually we came in with the research. So how we could implement it, and we just suggest to build a GS configurator, which with the ability to upload the image, and to see to see your face with the glasses on and change the color of the glasses, and so that was a result. That was a final result, and the customer was happy. So that was a small one. I mean, that was a small project, but that's maybe the answering your question, how we handle the challenges.
That's very helpful.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. That's great.
From your experience with Magento in today's world, or Shopware, the main two systems, do you think they're better equipped now today to hold 5 million, 10 million SKUs? Do you think you have to invest more in kind of like DevOps or some mechanisms, or?
I don't want to say some loud words about this, because I'm not a technical person completely. I'm not a developer. I'm mostly in the business side. Maybe Brandon got some things to say, because I'm not. I don't have really a technical competence to speak about it yet. So sorry.
But Isaiah, man, absolutely. Listen, I didn't mean to avoid that part of your question earlier as well. We just kind of got moved on.
You ran away from it. I saw him running.
Listen, I'm going to come back to it, because I think you're right. Listen, the technology is infinitely better than it was a couple of years ago, right, for this type of thing. I don't think that means that everybody with that many SKUs is going to have a real easy job, jumping on board
super fast, right? But
that's exactly right. But I think the technology is right. So within Magento, right, you've got new, high performance themes. You've got other type of stuff that's going to help, continue to bring that performance better we didn't have before.
Headless stuff. You want to go headless technology, potential. You want to go that way, but
absolutely. And that's why you need to have someone who's kind of gone through that before, that you can have a conversation with, to say, what are my options? Here's what I've got. What are my options, and how do I do it? And the one thing that I will say from an agency approach side, right? Because I actually had a really, really tough time finding an agency at that point in time that honestly cared enough about my business. It was a brand new business that we built. I think we were, 20 million in annual revenue or something by the time, it sold out, and we did some other things. But it was really tough. And right, you have to go in and really try to find an agency who's going to care enough about these millions of products, just like you do. So as you're evaluating agencies, I think that's a really important thing, is to really find out, have they ever worked with that many SKUs before? Have they, what are the strategies they've employed with others? And are they forward thinking about it? And are they going to care enough about what I'm trying to do, as a business, to be able to say, yeah, I'm going to help you build out a strategy that many SKUs will actually work for you.
Yeah. So obviously catalog is a pretty core issue for most B2B organizations. I'm curious what you guys have found as kind of the second or third common problem that you've seen with B2B commerce, and any things you've done to overcome it. I can name some of the things we've seen, but I'm just kind of curious how they might match up.
Yeah, I'll say from, we talked a little bit about connected systems. That was a massive challenge, right? Just all of the pieces and how does it all play together? You've got a lot of legacy systems in most B2B places.
Yeah.
Some will integrate well, some won't. And, how do you are you forward thinking enough to be able to say, it's worth the exercise to get to where I need to be so that I can manage all this correctly? I think that's a big challenge. Marketing is a pretty massive challenge, right? This is a new type of marketing. You've never done it before, potentially.
Yeah.
How are you going to approach that? And certainly don't try to manage marketing across maybe every SKU, right? Again, find those that make the most sense, find the categories that work for you, and figure out how to do that. Just because you've done it before, person to person in a more B2B fashion, doesn't mean that people are going to just show up for it, right? You got to have to take a look at that and be a little bit creative with what makes you unique.
Yeah, I find the system integration work is a lot harder than people estimate. There are some pre-built connectors, but I think generally the pre-built connectors don't usually cover a lot of the B2B use cases or the nuances that might come up in B2B. So people kind of assume, oh, I plug in this connector, it's going to solve my integration problems. But in reality, you end up maybe even needing a custom integration, or like maybe adding some customizations to the connector. And I just find those integrations end up being quite a bit more complicated for B2B than people expect up front.
Well, there are more. That's the thing too. They're just more. Yeah. So even if they're more complicated, I do agree with that. I think your assessment is absolutely right. But when I'm working with a B2C client and then I run over to a B2B client, the B2B client almost always has more things happening. It's like there's 17 more integrations we've got to look at for some reason that they're there. So maybe the evolution over time was that maybe you won't have that many integrations. Maybe you won't need to. Then maybe something else will occur, but we're not there yet. Right now, it's a lot.
But you also said something I think very relevant is most of these B2B organizations have been around for quite a while, at least 20, 30 years. And so their systems are generally also still, most of them are not on the latest version of the ERP or whatever it is. And so there's also dealing with the legacy side of it too, that sometimes they don't even have APIs.
And that's one of the big challenges, right? That as you go to sell this kind of on an internal basis at any of these, B2B companies, it's a tough sell internally. Finance is like, we don't want to do that because there's all these things, so yes, it's worth it. But yeah, it's going to take some effort to get there. So, but it's worth it. So
it is. And I want to mention, jump on the other thing that you brought up, Brandon, just see where we go with this. The marketing piece, I love, I'm a marketer. I've been a CMO. I've done this, from all different angles now. And so I love talking about marketing with B2B, especially because they all feel, even if they're doing a great job, that they're not there yet. Like they haven't optimized exactly how to market, in a B2B world. Whereas a lot of people in B2C, again, where they'll feel like, well, we've figured it all out, and this is what we're doing, and maybe we'll try and test one new thing out or something. B2B, until very recently didn't even think of doing stuff in social media, right? So it's a very strange kind of balance. So like how does your agency, how do they get in the middle of that, right? And Vladimir, you can answer this too, but how do you get in the middle of the marketing piece too? Do you have marketing consultations, or are you just working on the tech side, or how does this work in for you guys?
Well, uh, I would say if we need to if we need to get closer to marketing part, so we're still on well, we have to learn the full customer, the customer portrait. So so what's the business look like, so what's behind, so how they treat with the numbers, how they treat, so what's the goals of this business. So sometimes, well, it's even not sometimes we see that, well, the development part is usually 10% of some maybe some small amount of support hours.
Mhm.
That's what a lot of customers wants to from agencies like us.
Sure.
And that's the reality, and that's where we need to step in like a business consultants. And that's actually the goal for the next year for us. So we try we try to became, we try to become the business consultants. We try to implement the part with UX health checks. That's one of our new products we're trying to implement. And so that's what that's my true passion, to because I like to understand the whole picture of the business first, and then I could, because I'm not a big fan of the guys who can say, well, yeah, we can do everything, let's run, let's do everything, we are ready for everything. You want to implement it, let's rock. You want to implement this, we are ready to do it. You want to update from last Magento release, yeah, why not, let's do that. So yeah, and that's maybe why we always negotiate with the customers. So why you want to do that, so
Yeah.
what's the reason you want to do that?
Yeah.
Well, so I don't know if that answering your question, but
That's a good answer, even if it doesn't have to be exactly the answer to my question. That's a good answer.
yeah.
I think our listeners will like that.
I will
that's
say
very
though,
useful.
I think the marketing is interesting. I think you made, I definitely agree in general, and you line up pretty much with what I was expecting, which is product data and the integrations. Those are two hard pieces, and I think people underestimate just doing that well, and standing up a good website can be hundreds of thousands of dollars just to have a decent theme, well integrated with good data. It takes a while to get the core feature set for B2B working with, special pricing and just like the base use cases to buy, right, integrated into the ERP or whatnot. I think those two, if you can't have good product data and you can't have good integrations, and the base infrastructure just doesn't work. But I also agree that the marketing is a huge problem. And I think that B2B, especially in distribution, manufacturing, just the companies that we kind of think about from a B2B commerce perspective, have a massive marketing problem. I think they have been operating in an old world of, okay, we go to the golf course, so we know this guy, we get referrals or cold call. And that worked in the 90s and early 2000s. And Tim, we've talked about this quite a bit, but I do think that marketing is getting harder. There's so much noise on the internet. And these B2B companies are really kind of not adapted to modern digital marketing or inbound. I guess I'd call it inbound marketing, which is kind of where most B2B marketing has gone towards, the SEO, Google, where people are searching or organically finding companies through some version of digital marketing. And I think most B2B companies don't have a very strong handle on that.
Well, I'll dive in before you guys answer this, because I'll just tell you the results of one of my B2B client surveys. They surveyed their own clients. So I can't really release the name of this guy, but they surveyed their own clients and said, what do you want? What kind of stuff are you looking for? And they're saying things like, I want a mobile app to do everything. And how come you're not on my social media channels? And I expect to be able to find you in the following places, and I see no content. They actually are saying this, and these are like big B2B players, and they're all of their clients who are doing crazy things, sometimes in the millions of dollars. They're saying a lot of the same things that B2C people often used to say. They used to say to I worked on a project for LL Bean like 20 years ago, and they said, how come your website doesn't do this? And when will you do this, right? It's almost like that for B2B right now when you're surveying your own clients. So I think it really ties in with what we're saying about marketing here.
It does. It absolutely does. Boy, when you look at the marketing, I'm always reminded of one thing, right? And that's everyone's a consumer first, right? So whether it's B2B or whether it's B2C, right? You're still talking to a person, right? And sales is all about selling to people who and people buy from people, right? Who they know, like, and trust, right? So it's all about that. You can build that likability, you can build that trust anywhere, right? They want to see you out there. They want to see that you're making an effort to know where they're at and be there. So that's good. One of the other pieces that came to mind as you guys were talking about that is, you might have to just get creative with different strategies, right? It's not, you don't need the one viral video that's going to work like maybe some B2C merchant needs. What you need is a strategy.
You don't need the
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot about all those. That was awesome though. But you are going to need a strategy, right? One of the strategies that worked well from my perspective, since I was selling SKUs from other manufacturers, was honestly advertising on SKU numbers, right? Which is probably the least sexy type of advertising, but it brought our cost per click down quite a bit because there was random numbers, but we were able to pick up a lot of that, right? And what I learned through that whole process is just do something different, right? Google loves something different, something unique, something that's not what everybody else is doing. So everybody else had a certain type of, here's how you find parts and everything. And I took a very different approach to that. Mm-hmm. And that's why most of my traffic came through organic in the end, right?
So I totally agree. And one of the problems I see with B2B is they don't even want to show list price. So I think there's a huge opportunity in B2B to just, if you have decent Google Shopping, if you get Google Shopping going with your catalog and some long tail SKUs or Bing, you probably get some pretty low cost per click, high conversions, which we have seen with companies that are willing to put their prices out there. But, I think that there's this fear for a lot of B2B companies they don't want to do that because obviously they want people to log in and get special pricing. But have you seen ways to combat that? Or, I see that as a common problem for a lot of B2B companies. They don't even want to show a price. And if you don't have a price, I don't think you can't use Google Shopping.
Yeah, no, you're right. You absolutely can't. And worst case would be to show a price that just is not, not even relevant. But I think there's some things, you can lead them down that funnel, right? If on the B2C side we've learned anything, it's, manufacturers like to control their pricing, a lot of map pricing stuff, a lot of different things out there. And so I think part of that trust factor comes from the transparency of pricing, right? And so that's, as consumers, that's what we're hoping to find. I really don't want to click on something and say, I don't know what the price is, but I'm just going to click on it and see what happens. I'm probably not going to click on it, right? So I think from a B2B perspective, and I get that it's all going to be custom. So put a little flag in there, discounts. But I do whatever you need to do to indicate that a preferred customer pricing or something might become available.
But special pricing or something to.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Isaiah knows what I'm going to bring up. Isaiah knows it because I bring it up like every other episode. Tiered pricing. clients over and over again say, I want to know that my pricing is fair. And if it's open, it's fair, right? So if I know that I have to buy 1,000 units or 10,000 units or 100,000 units in order to get this price, then that's the way it is. I don't want to have unfair pricing. I don't want to have, so that's really the movement, the direction a lot of the clients are saying in surveys and in public data. So businesses that kind of are still too resistant to that notion and that everything has to be customized, I think they're really going to fall behind, or they're going to have issues. They're going to
I
have
do
to change.
think that eventually the smarter companies will automate more pricing, like through tiered discounts or bulk. Like,
whatever.
hey, you spend 100 grand a year, you hit a new tier, you unlock a new tier. I think Apple actually does this where like it's based on your annual volume, and their discounts are pretty horrible, by the way, because they're like
They're terrible, but at
3%
least they're
off,
real discounts.
like
They're real.
but they do have business discounts, and my understanding, at least from I haven't been that involved, but it's a volume-based program. I'm sure if you're spending millions a year, that's a whole different world. But for most people, I think it's just a tiered program, and basically you just get a set discount until you hit a certain volume, and it keeps going down.
I mean, the last thing I'll say about it in this episode, because I could talk about this for hours, is that companies that have switched to tiered pricing have not lost clients, and they've continued to make good money, right? So I'm just going to leave that there and let people think about that who are listeners. That is
You're
true.
saying that managing an insanely complex pricing table per customer it's a great business model, or
let me say, I'll start a new business where I want to have 100,000 prices for the same screw. That's what I want to start. I want to start that. Right.
Pricing shrouded in mystery sounds like it might not be the winning game. That's
not anymore. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
That's the thing.
Not anymore.
It's not.
That's true. Well, and why not have the program? Why not have the incentives? Why not showcase that? And hey, what's stopping you from doing something one-off for the customers that absolutely need it? I'm not sure.
It's probably gamification culture. It's probably people being primed for membership programs and loyalty programs, right? I think a lot of this has contributed to it, over the years. And it's also, when people talk about things like radical transparency and, authenticity and honesty, a lot of it comes down to stuff like, if it's $5, it's $5, right? I mean, so it's a very interesting culture that we're in right now. And B2B has to reflect the culture.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about large catalogs, integrations, marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Any other tips or tricks or things that you've seen that maybe move the needle for B2B that was just kind of something that maybe you wouldn't expect, or just, I don't know, could be just a funny anecdote.
It's just like anyone, right? Everyone's always looking for, what's the one thing that makes the biggest difference? I would say, it's the biggest challenge, at least with the B2B merchants that I've worked with, has been jumping over that hurdle and selling it internally and making the decision that says we're going to do this and we're going to make this a priority. I think in the end, they find a lot of hesitation throughout most of these organizations. Salespeople feel like they might get replaced by a website. Well, I think the statistics show that in the end, salespeople can utilize that website as one of the biggest catalysts to help driving their sales. That there's so many ways. So structure it correctly. Don't let those hurdles be a barrier as you try to jump into it.
Would you say it's fair to say that that it's a long journey, and these companies need to kind of invest in this being a multi-year, multi-phase journey? And I think that's obviously depends on the maturity. If you're Grainger, that's the thing. Grainger started making this multi-million-dollar investment, I think, in their first versions of the sites back in like 2006, or they're 20 years into their investment, right? And I think that's what companies don't realize is they think it's like this one-time purchase, and it's really an ongoing annual investment into their future, kind of, right? And I think that's a little bit what's missing.
Yeah, no, you're right. Right, e-commerce is ongoing, right, and it's ever changing. It's part of the fun, but it's part of the challenge, to be honest. So you know, take these companies that have done, like, I mean, Granger's an amazing example of what they're trying to do. And boy, you don't have to launch to everybody at once. Carve off a chunk of customers, try to go after it, get some feedback, create whatever user groups you want, do whatever makes sense, but make that customer become the center of what you do. You're doing it for them, so why not get their input as you do?
Cool. We usually like to have people kind of give any parting advice. Or Tim, I know you're
Or
kind
a
of
look, I always have more, but I love asking people, just, it's not even a putting you on the spot thing, but how are you looking at 2024 now that we're at the beginning really of the year? I want to throw that out to you guys. So, you really lots of anticipation, lots of pent-up demand, or or what type of trends do you see coming up?
And it could be like 2 to 3 years. It doesn't have to be exact.
The next couple of years. It doesn't even have to just be 2024. What do you see, Vladimir? Do you see anything in particular as a strategy guy? Like what's big for 2024, 25? What's coming up? Oh,
I think we might have lost Vlad again.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, yeah, we can.
We can hear you. Your video's lagging a little behind, but we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Maybe try killing the video.
We can hear you.
Yeah. Let me turn off. Maybe the video. Yeah.
You sound great.
Well, the input. I see a pretty huge influence of AI, and I'm not sure how it affects actually to e-commerce, because we never touched so far like AI in terms of some e-commerce implementation so far. Some like some chatbots, something like this, but I still believe that there still will be the challenge for entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter what's the business size. I mean, it's a small size, medium size, or large scale businesses. Why I'm talking about the challenges? The challenge because there will be a lot of products. I mean, I see the e-commerce it's heading all the year. I mean, year after year. So it's a lot of products has been implemented so far, and a lot of products will be created. And so so I would I would see this question. I mean, the answering this question, I would ask like merchants, entrepreneurs. So how they gonna choose from so many platforms that they could work with? So so for example, like Adobe solutions, like Shopify, Shopware. So and that's where actually you need to find the really good experts. So to figure out what will be the core. I mean, what will be the answer to your needs? So and that will be more and more challenging. So we are heading to I guess we're heading to the really cute times when we need to avoid like some blank speech, some blank promises, when we need to go deeper to the business, to the customer business, and figure out what's behind, and what do you need to what would be the best option to implement something. So it doesn't matter what it would be. I mean, what's the instrument for it? So what's the stack for it? So it has to be implemented in one way on the other one. So we just need to pick the relevant stack in one scenario. We need to choose maybe some different product in a different scenario, but it's a matter of the strategy. So I'm always about the strategy, and that's what we're trying to keep in IT Delight. So we're trying to follow the strategy in the long run. So what's going to be for the customer? Yeah.
Go ahead, Isaac.
I definitely agree that I think AI is still new and there's not a ton of like tangible use cases for the average kind of B2B commerce, mid-market. But I do think that it'll be heavily used or should be used. The smarter companies, I think, will heavily be using it in the context of product data. I think
it's happening. That's where it's happening already. Just so you guys know, I'm working with a client that's they're doing training data on all their product descriptions and basically downloading all of it into different AI tools and then having it spit back different versions of it to test out. It all happens instantly, right?
We've already been using it in that context, and I think we've got a long ways to go, and I think that's a major area I'd be trying to leverage AI. If I had a large catalog, would be product data.
But I would add to that too, and I want to be careful because I might send Tim down the rabbit hole on the marketing side here if I'm not careful. But
you never know.
Oh shoot! All right, how much longer? We got another hour. Okay,
I'll stop. I'll stop. I promise.
No, I'm teasing. But listen, we've been using, from a marketing perspective, right? We've been using forms of AI for a lot of years on the B2C e-commerce side, right? And so it's just all this hype and all this interest around the generative AI stuff, right? The chat GPTs and all that. But I think you guys are spot on, right? Why would you not leverage it in a way that helps with product data, that helps? I mean, had I had that back, we would have had a lot better product descriptions. All our meta information would have been far better. Why not use it for competitive research? See what other people are doing, identify, those types of trends. And I think there's a lot that you can do. But I think people look at that and they say, it's so big, where do I start? Well, you start on something small. Honestly, that's always the case.
I think people try and overcome or try and do some grandiose things like, hey, is your product data good or is it an A+? Probably not. It's probably a B- or C+. Maybe use AI to get your product data to an A+. Like start with a simple use case and get value that way. And I think that's the best way to approach some of these new things. So,
well,
we're not building rocket ships, right? Like I think all of us, we're trying to make it easier to transact. We're not building SpaceX.
Well, just so listeners can hear this, just for the, how the LLM, generative AI stuff worked for a product description with a client of mine. What they did is they took, best products, wrote the heck out of those, had tested those, had great descriptions, all this kind of stuff, had data, right? Yeah. Use that as training data to load into the AI tool and say, learn how the format of this is, do this, and then here's the prompt. Yes. I want you to do X, and do that for all other product descriptions using data from these fields, right? And so that's how sophisticated it is already. And then all of a sudden, you write 10 and you have 100, or you write 20 and you have 5,000, right? It really just made it easier. And of course, people were checking a lot of these to see how valid they were, that there was no hallucination or anything like that, but they were good. They actually were good. So saves time.
And that's amazing use case. And I think even ChatGPT came out and said this, right? Like you'll get better results as you give it smaller tasks, right? Let it do this task. Then let's add the next one. Then let's add the next one, because it needs time, right? It needs time to learn. And you feeding that extra data of what has worked for you. Smart move.
It's smart, and clients should try it out. Just try it. See how it starts working. Start small. I totally agree with Isaiah's approach and everyone else's.
Yeah, I think if there's one takeaway from this whole podcast is like, try to start using AI in 2024, 2025 for product data. I think it's just such an obvious.
It's a good way to go.
Good use case for what AI is capable of, and for the number one, probably most common B2B commerce problem, which is product data and catalog, right? And so you bring the two together. hopefully that one lesson we taught people will save them. They all should write us a check after this podcast, right?
They should. Every listener should write a check after hearing this podcast. Please
Trellis and Tim and the B2B Hard Truth.
I'll give you my PayPal, my Venmo.
They can split it up between all of us.
What do they say? It's in the comments below, is right?
In the comments below. Here's my Venmo.
You guys.
Anyway,
no, this honestly has been amazing. Listen, we've gone through a little bit of a rough patch. Consumer behavior. The spending has been down, and our recent Black Friday, Cyber Monday, like, it was encouraging to kind of watch what the consumer wants to do, but they're nervous, right? And so I think in the next year or two, people have been holding out on investment, waiting to see what's going to happen, right? But those who win are going to be those who make the investments, take the risks, and move forward. So,
well put, and thank you both. IT Delight, really appreciate you being here for our. What episode was it, Isaiah? Which one?
115. I hope
115. Thank you so much.
Someone's lose track because they're in the editing, and I haven't checked the editing, but I think
115. That's a good one. Thank you,
awesome.
gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.